Hello, Norman. Thank you so much for doing this today. Me, my mum, my dad are all a massive fan of your music, so it's a pleasure to have you on. You've
I did it for your mum. Did this for your mum.
it's so good to speak to you. You've had such a big career in music, so there's a lot to talk about. But firstly, my first question is, where did it all begin for you in music?
Listened to somebody called Donny Osmond or the Osmonds in 1974, I believe it was. So I would have been 9. And Donny Osmond had a piano that had little light bulbs on it that lit up when he played it, and he had a leather jacket with his name written in studs on the back. And I just thought, I want a piece of this. This is cool. This is what I want to do. So I'd always loved music, but no, I just became obsessed with pop music in all its forms. And I was lucky to grow up in a very rich time, I think, for pop music. Growing up during the 70s, there was just so much going on, and like fashion and music and that whole kind of lifestyle. And yeah, so from then on, that all I ever wanted to do was be in the music. I mean, first of all, I wanted to be a pop star, but then that kind of, as I grew up a bit, I didn't necessarily want to be a pop star. I just wanted to be involved in it. But then when I was about 14, punk rock came along, and then that was when I got really excited, because it's like, you don't have to be good looking or particularly talented. All you got to do is have a good idea. And then that's when I started thinking, maybe I could actually do this.
Because people who know you now as Fatboy Slim, a DJ, but before that, you obviously speaking there about your love for pop music and punk rock. You were a bass guitarist in the House Martins. Was being a bass guitarist always your first passion?
No, I'd kind of been in punk bands, and I played drums. I sung in one, and then played guitar in another one. And no, the House Martins, I actually took up the bass to be in the House Martins, because Paul's a friend of mine, and I kind of I learned to play the bass to be in that band. But yeah, I mean, the House Martins was I always liked kind of black music and soul music, and being a white suburban middle class kid, I felt it wasn't my my culture and my heritage to play that kind of music. So sort of pop music, or the sort of indie pop that the House Martins did, I felt was more what I should be doing in life. But yeah, no, I mean, I played in 3 different sort of more pop bands than before I embarked on the Fatboy Slim period of my career.
Because I think, if I'm right, most of the House Martins are from Hull, but you're from Brighton. How did that work? Like, how did you get introduced to Paul and the other guys?
Well, Paul used to live down south where we were at school together, and I was actually in a band with him when I was still at school, and then I moved down to Brighton, he moved up to Hull, but we kept in touch. And then he had formed the House Martins, and they needed a bass player, and so when I finished college, I moved up there to join him. But yeah, it was just through knowing Paul when we grew up in Surrey.
If I'm right, you were with them for a good 3 or 4 years, and it was a big part of your career, reaching #1 with Caravan of Love. How was your time with them?
Oh, it's fabulous. It was like, if you think, when you're a kid and you've dreamt of being on Top of the Pops, and you've dreamt of, playing gigs and traveling around the country, and it was everything that I dreamed of. And yeah, I mean, it was a fabulous time, and I'm still friends with Paul to this day. And it was like we lived the dream together, and that's something that you can never take away. I mean, the only thing was that musically, it wasn't really the music I liked.
Yeah,
but I was having fun playing it. But in the end, I mean, that was why we split up in the end, was we kind of musically, we wanted to do different things. But no, I mean, it was everything that I dreamed of.
and like you've just mentioned there, after they disbanded, you went with Beats International as a #1 hit with "Don't Be Good to Me," and that was like sort of in the transitional period before you went to Fatboy Slim. What made you want to go into that transition from being a bass guitarist to being a superstar DJ?
Well, like I said, my love had always been kind of playing funk records and hip hop records, and that was kind of that had always been my hobby and my first love. But until they sort of invented the drum machine and the sampler, it was difficult for white people to make black music. And so, you know, without sort of trying to pretending to be black or American or something. But when they invented the drum machine and the sampler, it's like, oh, we can make these records ourselves without having to pretend to be black or American. And so that kind of freed me up. And it was, you know, I all the friends that I used to DJ with, like Cold Cut and Tim Simonon and people like that, they were all having pop hits. And it's like, I mean, that was one of the things with the house fights. It's like, oh God, the music that I did as a hobby could, you know, is something that now is becoming a career. Because I've always DJ'd. I've DJ'd since I was about 15. But in those days, DJing wasn't really a career. It was a hobby. It didn't pay enough to actually make it a full-time job. So it's just something you did in the evenings if you were a vinyl junkie, if you had all the records. So, but yeah, around that time, people started, you know, dance music was crossing over and getting on the radio and getting in the charts. And I was lucky that I'd already done 10 years of background research in it all. And I knew the tunes and I knew how it worked.
Who were your biggest influences dance-wise? Because I can see behind you all them records. There must be a good few in there.
Probably my biggest two musical influences were The Clash and Grandmaster Flash. And I saw Grandmaster Flash supporting The Clash, and he was, you know, chopping up records and scratching, and I was just absolutely transfixed of like, here's how you take DJing onto another thing, but also making records out of bits of other people's records. He made a tune called Adventures of Grandmaster Flash on the Wheels of Steel, which was like a cut up of Good Times by Chic and Another One Bites the Dust by Queen, and just little fragments of records. And that really got me into the idea of you know, creative DJing and making pop records out of little bits of other pop records.
And you eventually became Fatboy Slim in 1996, but in 1998, probably, I don't know if you'd agree, one of your most well-known albums, You've Come a Long Way, Baby, has the hits such as Rockefeller Skank, Right Here, Right Now, Praise You. Is there anything you'd like to add about that album? Because that is massive.
Well, no, it's definitely the biggest album I've ever done. It was just a moment. I think there was a kind of dance music was now established and getting played on the radio, and I got a bit bored of house music, and I'd got a bit bored of hip hop had gone all kind of gangster, and I just started experimenting of putting all the different bits or the best bits of the music I like. It was basically it was like kind of the pop music I'd grown up with, a punk attitude, hip hop samples, but a kind of house with the energy of acid house. And I just thought I'd kind of mulch all them together. And by the second album, by that album, we kind of worked out, this is how you can make pop records out of bits of all the influences that you've had. And yeah, I definitely hit a purple period. Like there's the 4 songs you just reeled off there, that I wrote them all about in a week. Just 1 week where it's like, I've got it. I've got the formula. I know what I'm doing here. And you know, I spent years trying to recreate those exact conditions and never nailed it again. But it's yeah, no, it was just a moment when there was a lot of people who liked going clubbing, but they're a bit bored with how house had turned out, and was looking for something sort of new and exciting. And it just happened to be quite radio friendly and video friendly, and you know, because of that, it kind of exploded.
Them songs on that first album, like you've mentioned, you picked bits out. Did you have an idea of what you wanted them to be about before you written them, or did you like pick the bits out that you wanted to use and then see what that formed into?
No, they would normally start with like a vocal sample, like, you know, Camille Yarborough singing "We've Come a Long, Long Way Together Through the Hard Times and the Good." It was just a message I quite liked, and I'd sort of tried writing songs with lyrics in it, and I can do it, but I'm not very good. But just taking little memes, really, kind of pre-internet memes, just a slogan or something if you can find one that kind of fits more than one situation, like, you know, the lyrics of Praise You, kind of, they reverberate around every aspect of your life. You know, every time you play it, you can think of it in a different way. Like the new tour, we're we called it we've come a long, long way together,
Yeah.
which seems a little bit obvious and for me a little bit cheesy. But coming out of what we've just been through in the last 18 months with COVID, it sort of rings true again. And then, you know, I'm doing shows for NHS workers, and it's like, you know, it's celebrating them. So yeah, just finding memes that work in different situations, like right here, right now, means so many different things to different people, but it's still kind of stirring. Rather than people who write intensely personal songs, or political songs, or whatever, or love songs, I just take slogans or ideas that I've heard other people do and then put them in a different environment.
And they are honestly such great songs. They're just iconic. That them three right here, right now, Praise You, Rockefeller Skank are just some of the best songs I've ever listened to. Just so good.
I take it I've got your mum and dad to thank for that.
Yeah. I wasn't born back then, but a lot of my music influences have come from my mum and dad. Yeah.
They've brung you up well.
Yeah. It certainly haven't. That album, You've Come a Long Way, Baby. Another iconic thing is that cover. I remember the listening party you did with Tim Burgess, and I actually asked one of the questions to you about the front cover. You still don't know who that is on there to this day.
No, and after that listening party, it did kind of go out on the World Wide Web, and still we don't know who he is. So, yeah, that's to be continued. That one. Where
did the photo come from? Like, where did you find it? Because I remember reading, like, I got the special edition of when it was remastered, and it has a lot of stuff about it. Wasn't it taken at a Fat People's Festival or something?
It was taken at a Fat People's Festival somewhere in America in like the early 80s, and it was. I just saw it in a newspaper. It was something about obesity or something, and but at that time the working title of the album was Viva la Underachiever, which again, it's just something, it's like one of those phrases that kind of turned me on. And so that was going to be, and I just thought that if anyone looks like an underachiever who's completely proud of himself, you know, he's standing there with a beer in one hand and a fag in the other, just going, I'm number one, you know. So that it's kind of excited me because of that. But then when we came to release the album, I just had like 3 top 10 hits in a row, and somebody pointed out that me referring to myself as an underachiever might seem not to ring so true. So so we changed the title of the album, but I by that point I'd fallen in love with the fat kid, and just his expression is like, you know, it's like, what, you know, what, I'm happy, what, which is, you know, it's a nice message. I like that in life. You know, it's all right. It's all right.
And it's great as well because it's different to any other cover that has been seen before.
I don't know whether it's just a personal thing. I just don't like the idea of a picture of me on the front. So but it's an excuse it's an excuse to explore things that you want to say or do, or I don't know, kind of moods you want to evoke. And yeah, that photo just for me just sort of summed up how I felt about life at that moment.
And it's different as well, creative, like I've said, different to any other cover. In 2001 came Weapon of Choice, which is another one of your brilliant songs. But one of the iconic things about that is Hollywood actor Christopher Walken in the video. How did that come about?
That came about, I'd worked with Spike Jonze on the Praise You video, and we're sort of friends and a lot of mutual respect. And he just phoned me up one night and he said, I'm just outside, I'm in a restaurant having dinner with Christopher Walken, and he's dropping tons of hints about how he trained as a professional dancer. And he's dropping hints about how he'd like to get his dancing down on tape while he's still young enough to do it. Do you want him like tap dancing in your next video? And I went, yeah. I just went, go back in and say yes. And yeah, so it was great. It was Christopher Walken was he was up for doing something kind of ironic, and as it turns out, iconic. And
Yeah.
but Spike Jones was the instigator of all that.
Was it all filmed in one take? Or was it all actually him as well? Because I know there's one point where I think
there's a couple of points where it's obviously not him.
yeah, because I remember
there's some references where this stuntman jumps down and he jumps up like that. No, I don't know. I mean, the only bad thing about that video was I was supposed to be there. It was filmed in LA, and I was supposed to be there, but my wife decided to have our first child that very same day, so I had to. I couldn't fly over and be there. I was supposed to be doing the hoovering. I was supposed to be the busboy doing the hoovering at the beginning of it. But no, so I don't know the full ins and outs, but no, I mean, it took a couple of days to film, and they went to town doing it. I mean, Christopher Walken and Spike did such a great job on that one, but I can't take any of the credit. I was at home watching my son being born.
Did you ever have any contact with Christopher? Like, do you ever like texting, or did you ever meet him, or was it just like the video, because of what happened, you never got to be there and didn't meet him?
I didn't meet him until the MTV Awards. And then we sat together. We sat together through the MTV Awards, and he was lovely. But it was quite weird because by then, by the time I think we won 6 awards that night, and so by the time I met him, it was like it had already achieved its iconic status. Yeah. And rather than thinking, why the hell did I do that? He was like, a whole new generation of people who may not have seen my films are kind of digging what I do. So it was a very lovely situation and he was a wonderful, beautiful, charming man as well.
I mean, fair play to him for doing it because it's a brilliant video. Now, I'd like to talk about gigs.
Gigs, right?
Because where haven't you played? You've done a big thing, you've done the biggest of venues. But have you got a gig that's got a most memorable moment or sticks out in your mind as one of the best?
I'm more likely to remember the best rather than worst. I mean, I've had some stinkers, but you tend to try not to remember too much about them, and I'm too embarrassed to tell you about what may or may not have happened. No, I mean the best. I mean, probably obviously the memorable ones, like the ones I did on Brighton Beach. To play to a crowd that huge in your own hometown, that was like sort of thing you want to take home. But I don't know. And I think probably some of my best gigs have been at Glastonbury over the years. I tend to play 2 or 3 per year at Glastonbury in different, tiny little ones in the rabbit hole, and then sometimes bigger ones. So that I kind of is probably my spiritual home of consistently great gigs.
Because I know Noel Gallagher once said before, if Glastonbury doesn't change your life, it's like it never happened, because it must be amazing playing at Glastonbury, which is probably the ultimate festival, wouldn't you say, like to that amount of people?
Yeah, no, I mean, it is the ultimate festival, but for me, it's more about the festival rather than playing a gig.
Yeah.
It's changed my life in so many ways, but most of the life-changing things didn't happen anywhere near the stage that I was on.
In the fields.
Yeah, in the fields or at the Stone Circle or in the rabbit hole at 4 o'clock in the morning. The gigs are just my excuse to be there, and the reason I get 3 tickets from my mates and a nice place to camp. So yeah, no, I mean Glastonbury is different to all festivals, but it's the only festival where I used to stay all 4 days. Generally, you just drive in, play your show, drive out again. But I always stay there for the whole duration, and that's where I learn and experience and grow up and degenerate, all those things. Have you been there?
It must just be a brilliant time at Glastonbury. Like the whole experience of the weekend, it must be brilliant. Yeah.
For me, it's almost a sort of utopian society where we shake off all the unnecessary rules and regulations, but things like the weather determine that we still have to look out for each other.
Yeah.
So it's a community, and so it's not just a load of people going nuts. it's like a community collectively going nuts together. But there's a love in there in the way that people look after each other. I love the muddy ones as much as the dry ones, but it's just because the sense of community of like, we gotta hunker down and we got to look after each other. We got to share our dry clothing and, you know, stuff like that. So yeah, it's more than just a collection of bands playing and DJs playing. It's kind of it's an alternative lifestyle, which I'm not sure if I could live all year, but for 4 days it's great.
Yeah.
Throw off the shackles of normality and explore an alternative culture.
Last year you experienced a bit of a different gig. Let me just point this out. I think if you can see this photo, do you remember that night?
Oh yeah.
On Zoom. I was lucky enough to get on the Zoom call. What a night that was.
Did you get up on the screen?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I was actually. Yeah, I was on the big screen. Yeah, I was just lucky enough to get on the actual Zoom call with you and Idris Elba.
Excellent. Well, that was it. That was the only sort of stream that I did during lockdown that actually felt like I was alive and doing it.
Yeah.
Obviously, as a DJ, you know, if you're a band, you can perform to a camera or you can perform, you know, just playing the music. But with a DJ, it's all about your communication with your crowd and your the conversation you have with the crowd and the journey you go on together. So doing it just in your living room to a camera can be quite a staid environment. So the idea of me being able to see into people's homes and being able to react to them, I think we could take it further. If there's another lockdown, I want to do that again, but have a much bigger screen so I can really see people and have more people who get the gag of like, you know, it's all about you. It's not just about me. It's quite an interesting way. I think, yeah, we caught after that. I was like, that was good, but we could do it better. So yeah, if there is another lockdown, watch out. I'm going to come into your living room.
Yeah, it was a brilliant night and it was just great. Back obviously out of COVID now, you are hitting the road again in November. What are you looking forward to the most about that? Because it's just been such a long time since people can go out and have a good time. How much are you looking forward to getting back on that road and DJing?
What I love the most about it, I've done quite a few shows now since July, since everything started up again. And what I love the most is just the feeling of community, the feeling that we've all been through something and we're all celebrating coming out of it. And if you think that dance music and DJ culture, a lot of it is about escapism and about hedonism. You know, the message isn't, you know, you must overthrow the system or you must, you know, fall in love with me or something like that. It's just, let's all get lost together. Let's all escape from our boring lives or our difficult lives. And just for a minute, we can kind of live in this sort of fantasy world of flashing lights and loud music. And more than ever, after being cooped up, I think there's so much to celebrate and so much to escape, that the feeling of community in the shows that we do now and the feeling of excitement about just that pure abandon of like just losing yourself to dance, losing yourself to the visuals, but most of all, losing yourself to being part of a crowd.
Yeah.
The most amazing thing was I think, you know, everybody was a bit worried about going out in crowds again, and it's like the idea of going to a gig, and still to this day, apparently a lot of the shows are a lot of people aren't turning up. They bought tickets, but they're not turning up because they're a bit worried. But once you get in and surrender yourself to that, you know, all your sort of worries about, I don't know, social anxiety or something just disappear when you see everybody smiling and everybody's together. And it's a powerful thing. And obviously the bigger the show, the more powerful that thing becomes. And so the arena tour for me is I don't often play venues that big, but what we try and do when we do is try and turn that, what is potentially a sort of soulless aircraft hangar, we try and turn it into like the biggest, most friendly, warm, lovely club. And so, yeah, it's if it works, and I hope it will, it's just a chance to celebrate together with everybody else that we've come through this and that we're all still here. And in the intro to it says, you know, like, thank God that we're here. Yeah. Raise your hands for love, raise your hands because you survived.
I know what you mean, just like the feeling that everyone's together again, enjoying themselves. It's just brilliant. And I think for you music artists as well, it must have been so hard the 18 months not being able to do what you like best.
Yeah, no, it's very difficult. And it was dry. I was getting a little bit cranky sort of by September, October, when, you know, my kids had gone back to school, my son had gone off to university, and the walls were closing in. So, but I ended up working in a cafe for 7 months
Yeah.
just to get me out of the house and get me about. But yeah, no, it was a difficult time. And I think some sort of more traditional musical artists could sit and write and, you know, sort of spend the time wisely. But for a performer and a DJ, with to not be able to do it to an audience, was like this kind of having both hands tied behind your back.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was difficult. But I think the only bad time was when the second wave was coming, and all the gigs that we'd put back to November,
Yeah,
they were getting cancelled, and someone said this could go on for a very long time. You know, this could go on for years, and that was quite scary, because I do love my job. It's not just, you know, having something to do or having an income. I genuinely love my job, and without it, I just sort of shuffle around the house in my slippers.
I think that's probably the same for a lot of musicians and like all the people who work behind the scenes in the venues. It was awful for them as well. On social media, your kids do a lot with you. Do you like DJ when you do sets? Do you hope any of them can follow in your footsteps?
Do I want them from?
Would you like to see any of them follow in your footsteps?
Well, my son currently is. My son is thrown himself fully into DJing. But it's weird, because all the time that he lived with me, he never showed any interest in wanting to be a DJ. I would have happily taught him and shown the ropes. It was only when he left home and went to Bristol that he decided he wanted to be a DJ. But I suppose maybe that's the reason he didn't want to be like under my shadow. But no, it's nice. I mean, it's funny that both my children are doing things, but I'm not kind of pushing them. Me and their mum, we don't push them, go like, I can't get out there on stage. But I think obviously there's something in their genes. Having me and Zoe as parents, there's something in their genes, having two, you know, consummate show-offs as parents, that it's going to rub off over your life, and you're probably destined to do something similar.
Yeah. As a DJ, you've done a lot of collaborations? Is there any that stick out to you which you love doing? And if not, is there a dream collaboration you'd still like to fulfill before?
No, I mean, I've been lucky enough to work with David Byrne, Iggy Pop, and Bootsy Collins, and they were, you know, that would have been my fantasy wish list, I think. And they, you know, once you know, where do you go after you work with those three? So no, I don't know. It's funny collaborating with people, because I'm quite shy and I'm not very good at it. And there's been a couple that you won't have heard of. There's a couple where I've collaborated with people and it just hasn't worked, and we've like, should we just, you know, we'll just move on from this. So for me to work with heroes of mine, and to find out that they're just as beautiful and interesting and genius like as you thought, has been great. Especially David Byrne. I mean, I learned so much off him. But with him, I wrote a musical, which is kind of so far away from what I normally do. I was really out of my comfort zone. But that's what David Byrne does. He takes things out of their comfort zone, and he does them the wrong way around, and then makes them really brilliant. But no, I mean, I've always said the only person that I really would have loved to work with was Al Green, who is still alive, but he's now the Reverend Al Green. And we've dropped little hints, and, you know, I'm sure he must have heard that I wanted to work with him, but he probably has heard what a godless heathen I am, and as a reverend probably thinks best to stay away from me.
Hopefully one day you might have a change of heart and you might get that what you want.
Yeah, I think if it was going to happen, I've dropped so many hints. It would have happened by now if it was going to.
Finally, Norman, it's been a pleasure to chat to you today, as I'm such a big fan. Finally, have you got any new music in the pipeline or anything that you're going to look to get out anytime soon? Or
not really. No, I haven't. The last getting on for 10 years now, I haven't really been stimulated and turned on and excited about the prospect of making records.
Mm.
And I don't know if it's I've just got too old, or I don't know if I've made so many in the last 40 years that I've run out, or maybe I'm just having a very long sabbatical, and I might come back. So no, I don't know. I mean, there's no point in me making records for the sake of it, and if I'm not inspired to do it, I don't feel like I should inflict records on the rest of the world just because I feel I ought to. And I'm so inspired by DJing. I so love the life of traveling around the world, sharing records that you like with other people, and then chopping them up and playing them in different ways. I love that so much at the moment. Now, obviously, as I'm knocking on a bit, and there'll come a day when maybe I'm too old for the lifestyle and the late nights, in which case I then might go back in the studio and make records again. But I don't know. At the moment, I'm really happy. I'm really comfortable not making new music. Unless there's something that really, every now and then I'll do a remix if there's something that I really think I can do a good job on, but it's not my main. It's not on my passport. It used to say DJ producer, and now it just says DJ.
Just like at the minute, focus on getting out of COVID, getting back on the road, and just enjoying live music again.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've had such a I'm so lucky to have been able to work in the career I love. And on the DJing side, I'm fully aware that I am kind of, elder statesman verging on veteran. So there is a finite, there must be a sell by date. I don't know what it is, but there must be a sell by date looming up somewhere. So I'm just determined to wring every ounce of fun and stimulation that I can out of it while I'm still young enough to do it.
And I think that's great. And Norman, thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure.
No worries. Nice to speak to you. And give my love to your mum and dad.
Yeah, will do. Thank you.